So let's talk about Ireland. So the agricultural minister, Michael Creed, told the Irish Independent that if and when a hard Brexit becomes a reality, Ireland will be making a case for a major grant aid. So Ireland's looking for a lot of money from the EU, not happy about the way Brexit's going. It's very unhappy, was unhappy with the UK, it's unhappy with the EU's handling of it. So it's quoted saying, you're looking at hundreds of millions here between the beef industry and the fishing industry. We're talking mega money. So Ireland wants hundreds of millions of euros from the EU in emergency aid to see it through the Brexit times. Now, the spokeswoman for JeanClaude Juncker has come out and said, we have said many times the deal on the table is the best and only deal possible. It will not be renegotiated. So the EU aren't interested in renegotiating the deal, even though the UK is on a bit of a power play at the moment. You know, the EU basically just weren't happy with negotiating properly with the UK over Brexit. We've been stitched up. May's still trying to stitch us up because May essentially is a Remainer. May's a Remainer, so she's doing the dirty work of the EU. But as the No Deal becomes more and more likely, we're seeing the power play that the UK is actually on. You know, Ireland going cap in hand to the EU over wanting emergency aid. The EU's not going to listen to them. It come out a few days ago that the EU is looking at restructuring the way tax laws work across Europe. They want to remove countries' veto ability when new tax legislation comes in across the Eurozone or just the EU. The reason they want to do this is they want to restructure the way taxes are collected, and especially corporation tax. They're not happy with corporation tax. Ireland has very low corporation tax. It's 12.5% is the headline figure in Ireland, which is very low. It's like the lowest in the EU. But the European Union aren't happy about that. You see a lot of the media stories coming out from the EU. They're not happy with Google, not happy with Amazon, not happy with multinational companies who don't pay maybe as much corporation tax as the politicians would like them to. I don't really have a problem with that. Amazon's so cheap. I want Amazon to stay cheap. I don't want excess money going to the government where they can just waste it on projects of folly. So I don't really mind, but the island's really taken advantage of this. They have a very low nominal tax rate. It's 12.5%. Some multinational companies can actually streamline at 4%. You can get your corporation tax as low as 4% in Ireland. So the EU aren't happy about that. They're really going to stitch Ireland. But Ireland's basically screwed. Ireland's screwed. If this corporation tax comes into effect, where the European Union just like standardised corporation tax across member states, which is what the ultimate goal of the EU. The motto of the EU is an ever closer Europe. How do you get closer? Once you start collecting taxes, not letting sovereign states collect tax, but you just have a tax policy across the federal state of Europe. That's your full integration. Then they can start, funding their EU army, which is on the table. Start funding EU-wide healthcare, which is obviously on the table. This is a federal state. Just look at what went wrong in America. Power being taken from state level and given to the federal government. We're seeing exactly the same story happen in the EU, only it will happen on a worse scale, because at least America has a constitution to back it up. At least it has some ideas of liberty and freedom of capitalism to back it up. The EU doesn't really have any of that. It just only works in the interests of the EU itself and special interest groups and corporations that happen to be on the correct side of the EU. So Ireland's been a bit of a patsy. It's really like the EU has used Ireland as a patsy. It really made a huge deal over the Northern Ireland border with the Republic. That's still one of the biggest hurdles now for leaving the UK, and quite likely we'll see a no-deal Brexit. EU aren't going to negotiate again. JeanClaude Juncker's not interested in renegotiating. So Theresa May's looking at having her meaningful vote. What are we now for? So just over 10 days' time, the meaningful vote in Parliament is scheduled for the week commencing 14th of January. So 10 days' time, maybe just over 10 days' time, depending on which day that week they pick to do it on. It may be rescheduled again. If it looks like Theresa May is just not going to get the vote numbers she wants, they may just reschedule it. But we're running out of time now. It's good for no-deal pro-Brexiteers like me. It's good because no-deal at this point is the best possible Brexit. We can see we're on the power play at the moment. Ireland's not happy. France isn't happy. Italy's not happy. No, the whole EU is unhappy, which can only mean if the rest of the EU is unhappy, it must mean it's good for Britain, right? It must mean it because it's really us versus them at this point. So we'll see what happens with this meaningful vote, but they're rapidly running out of time for a no-deal Brexit at this point. Only good for us, only good for the UK, for the British people, and anybody that believes in Brexit, believes in the power of this country.